7:05, and with that, we will get things started. First off, I'd like to thank those of you who are here tonight to participate in this meeting and hear from us a little bit about what's going on. My philosophy as a police chief is that I want you all to hear the good, the great, the bad, and the ugly. I want you to hear it from me. That's what we strive for as an organization in terms of transparency. And we also know that safety in our town is truly a partnership. And what I mean by that is we cannot be effective at our job if we don't have a partnership with the community. And we'll talk a little bit about that as we go through this slide presentation. Again, my name is Ryan Monaghan. I'm your new police chief here. I've been here for about 7 months. And it's an absolute pleasure for me to serve all of you and be part of this police department. Also joining us tonight, we're very fortunate to have Sergeant Rob Law with us tonight. Sergeant Law is a seasoned veteran of the Tiburon Police Department and policing in general, and will provide some good in-depth details kind of about some of the topics we're going to talk about in terms of prevention and safety techniques based on his extensive experience. So we're very fortunate to have Sergeant Rob Law joining us tonight. He's also our Area 2 Commander or Community Policing Liaison, and he can briefly tell you once he comes on where that area is, and explain to you a little bit about what we're trying to do with our community liaison partnership and our area command system. It's basically having a point of contact for the folks that live in that particular area for ongoing crime, trends, quality of life issues, things where just the standard or normal police response doesn't seem to be effectively dealing with it. He's your conduit, and oftentimes he could be connecting you to resources and basically helping you problem solve. He's also with our area command. That's also the person you may want to go to. For example, if you have a particular neighborhood association meeting or otherwise and want some police representation there, he can help coordinate and set that up. So with that being said, I also would like to thank our Tiburon PD staff, our administrative services coordinator and emergency operations center coordinator, Lori Nilsson, and our record specialist, Angie Del Nevo, who not only helped put together this presentation, but more importantly, helped aggregate and collect the data. So I am going to get into our first slide. So the first slide here, I just wanted to provide all of you with a little bit of a summary of some of the residential burglaries we've had since June of 2021. You'll see that we've had 11 since June to current date. This is obviously a concerning trend for me. But as we go through this, again, one of the main goals of tonight's meeting is to talk about how you all can help us to what we would call harden your targets, or help us prevent some of these crimes from happening, or make it more difficult for those that commit them. I will say that we are not alone with this. We see these types of crimes occurring all over the Bay Area and specifically in our region. There are crews of individuals that are out and about that make a living off committing residential burglaries, and in some cases, both residential and vehicle burglaries. In many cases, these are opportunists. We also find that these are not just kind of your run-of-the-mill criminals. These folks can be very sophisticated and organized in how they do what they do. And so that's something to keep in mind. We also see patterns and trends in terms of the types of houses they're targeting. And we're hoping to share some of that information with you, again, in the hopes of preventative measures. So you'll see that the first one here we had was on June 17th. This was on Stewart Drive when an alarm activation went off and alerted the resident, who was actually home at the time, And when they came downstairs and confronted the would-be burglars, they fled. What that leads us to believe is that these individuals thought, for whatever reason, that house was going to be unoccupied. Whatever information they may have had, or whatever pre-surveillance. And what I mean by that is sometimes folks that are engaged in this type of activity will go out to a particular area or an address and scope it out ahead of time to see who's coming and going and what the patterns are. So that was the first one. And then you see on July 3rd, we had another alarm activated and interrupted a burglar. And in this case, there was an arrest made. Shortly after the burglary, the officers contacted an individual and based on their investigation felt that this individual was involved with that burglary. You'll see that this one is highlighted in red, as is the burglary on Via Capistrano that occurred on 6/30, or it occurred sometime between June 30th and July 5th. And the reason why we believe that is what we would call the MO, or the modus operandi, the way in which the person committed the crime was almost identical. And so that's what made us conclude that. And there was a lot of further investigation after the fact to try to connect the two. But we do still believe to this day that those two were connected. We had another one on Gilmartin Drive on the 3rd. Same thing. You'll notice some of the trends here: shattering big glass doors seems to be something that's a target, or any type of glass door. And then you'll see on Gilmartin Drive, we had a case that occurred between 6/29 and July 7th. And in this case, they shattered a glass door on the side of the house. This house did have an alarm, but for whatever reason, there might have been a malfunction, or the alarm was not set up for glass shatter. And so that's just something to keep in mind, that some alarms are only set to activate when doors are opened, and sometimes only certain doors in the house. There are other types of alarm systems that actually have sensors that will activate when glass is shattered. And again, that's a kind of a personal preference thing for folks that have alarms. Now, this one on Gilmartin Drive, this one and the one up on Gilmartin Drive where there was on 7/3, where there was a shattered sliding door. There was no alarm at that house for this particular instance. But the two ones on Gilmartin from 6/29 and the other one on 7/3, we believe that those were connected again with the same crew of individuals, as separate individuals from Via Capistrano and Via San Fernando. And the reason why we believe that is there was video surveillance in one of these cases where the suspects were actually captured. The challenging part, and as we are often seeing in many of these cases, especially with the pandemic, we're seeing people covering their faces, and in many cases they'll wear hoodies and other things to completely disguise their identity. So it's very difficult to make out oftentimes, any specific identifying features that might help us in identifying the individuals involved. So we believe these were involved, and I'll explain a little bit more as to why we believe that when I go into the next slide. And then you'll see Hillcrest Road. We had another one there on August 28th, where there was a rear French door, again with glass, that was shattered. And for whatever reason, at that point, folks may have left, and for one reason or another, the alarm was not set at that point in time when they weren't home. It might have been just a quick kind of outing. But just something to keep in mind, if you're away from your house and you have an alarm and you're paying for an alarm, just use it, always activate it, or have a system in place so that you remember to activate it. Another one, again, you'll see on September 16th on Blackfield Drive. This was, again, a broken window to the rear. And we say alarm was dismissed on this one, and we are not pointing the finger at this person, because this is very common. Especially if you get false alarms. In this particular instance, the resident was concerned that this may be another false alarm, and had the alarm company cancel the alarm, so there was no police response. Whether or not that would have made a difference in us apprehending the suspects is hard to say. It might have got us there a little bit quicker, but again, whether or not that would have helped us in actually apprehending them at the time, I don't know. But what we do know for sure is that in many of these cases, once the alarm goes off, the suspects will flee as quickly as they can because they do not want to risk being caught. We had another one here on 1020 on Reed Ranch, and this was an attempted burglary, we believe. There was a broken window on a French door where you see they tried to get in and basically break out a glass pane on a French door and open up the door. But this particular individual or these homeowners took an extra precaution by chaining their French doors together. So in this particular instance, when they tried to gain entry, the chain stopped them and they weren't able to force the doors open. 1117, again, we had a broken window to gain access to a garage in this case. So remember too, if you have valuables in your garage, make sure in an alarm system, make sure that alarm is hooked up and activated to trigger if there's entry made into a garage or maybe even a glass shatter to a garage window. Try to keep valuables out of sight of any garage windows because those are easier targets than houses. And then another case on Upper Cecilia Way on November 13th. This again was a rear French door, shattered glass. And then finally, the most recent one was on Diviso Street. And this was just a couple nights ago or a few nights ago. And this was a forced rear sliding door. So we don't believe that there was a take in this for whatever reason. Our theory on this one is that the suspects started to enter the house and for whatever reason were scared off. So again, that's kind of a summary of some of the cases. I will tell you to solve a case within a matter of minutes. I wish it was that easy. We have some really cool technology in today's day and age. As we know, we have automated license plate readers in this system, in this town. That is a valuable investigative tool. However, even with some of the most advanced technology that we have in today's day and age, solving these can still be a challenge. And the reason why I say that is as we advance the ways and the methods in which we investigate and try to solve these, so too are the individuals that are involved in these types of crimes advancing and otherwise innovating in the ways that they commit them. Oftentimes, as I said, hiding their identity and doing things that makes it extremely challenging for us to try to bring forward a presentable case to the district attorney's office. In many cases too, they know about DNA and fingerprints. And so we're seeing now that more of these folks are wearing gloves and taking other precautions to not leave behind what we would call trace evidence that we might otherwise be able to use to identify them. Some of them don't, and some of them still forget. And those are the ones, like I said, any break in any case, we're going to take that. So some of the things that we've been doing to try to prevent these is we've really been increasing patrols. We put out overtime patrols for what we would call proactive policing activity. Along with that, our officers making traffic stops for activity that they see as suspicious, and in some cases, when they get a hit for a stolen license plate, potentially stolen vehicles coming into our town. What we do know is that, again, these are very organized individuals, and that many of them will often steal cars and use those stolen vehicles to perpetrate their crimes, or they will use their own vehicles or a stolen vehicle and swap out the license plates. So some of the folks that are involved in this type of crime know that there are automated license plate readers out there in certain towns. And they also know that if people have video cameras at their locations, at their houses, and if you do, we always tell people, try to have a camera aimed at the front of your house that captures your front door, but also captures the street area as wide as possible in front of your home. And why we say that is so that potentially we can see the path of where the suspects might be coming in from and potentially capture a vehicle. The reason, again, why they would switch out the plates in addition to the automated license plate readers is if somebody captures them, the vehicle on video or otherwise sees them fleeing the scene and gets the license plate, they feel that will help deter capturing them. So I will say that any information is good information, although it creates an obstacle for us. It's not completely insurmountable. It does make it harder for us to identify the suspects when they do this type of activity. But again, it's not insurmountable because it's something to go off of as opposed to nothing. We are also working with other police agencies in our area, sharing information. Oftentimes when we have a crime like this, whatever information we have, we're aggregating that information. If we have pictures, that's why security surveillance cameras are so important to us, because we have photos of the suspects, at least stature, even clothing in some senses. Although clothing can be easily replicated, we realize that, but when we have something, an image of a person, and again, even a person with their identity covered or a vehicle, we're sharing that information with other law enforcement agencies and law enforcement databases and flyers, so that those other agencies are aware of the trends that we're seeing, so that they can then compare that to the cases that they have open. Because a lot of times what we find is that the folks that are doing this in Tiburon are not just targeting Tiburon, they're targeting other towns as well. And many of these cases are connected. And so that's why that sharing information with other law enforcement agencies and working collaboratively with our other agencies. For example, in our most recent attempted burglary, we were told that the sheriff's office had a similar type case in their jurisdiction, in unincorporated Tiburon, so in that Strawberry area. So again, the theory is that these are connected. I will say that there are multiple crews out there doing this type of stuff, but we oftentimes look for the similar MOs, as I talked about earlier, time frames, days of the weeks, and we oftentimes will try to clump those together and find that it's not completely uncommon for those to be connected. DNA and fingerprint analysis, if we will process the scene and we have reason to believe that the suspects touched something. That's why we ask you, if your house is broken into, especially that point of entry, wherever it appears that the suspects may have entered your home, try not to touch that area, because when the officers come out, they're going to want to process that for either fingerprints or what we would call touch DNA. Where that is helpful is if the individuals responsible for some reason have been arrested previously for a crime that would otherwise require them to submit DNA, or their fingerprints are on file already from a previous booking, we can then compare that. So it's helpful to us in the cases where we would have a known individual that's already been arrested. Now, we may not know who they are in our case, but they've been previously arrested and their DNA or fingerprint is in a database. If their DNA and fingerprints are not in a database, we're still going to try to collect that, but we're likely not to get a hit on that unless they're already entered into that database. So when I talk a little bit about high profile patrols and proactivity, as recently as last night, Sergeant Law, as a matter of fact, just being an alert police officer that he is and an experienced police officer, we received a hit, or what we would call an alert, last night on our automated license plate reader of a vehicle with stolen license plates entering our town. Our officers know and are very keen to the fact that this is a very common MO for suspects that commit these types of crimes, to swap out plates. So the officers, knowing that, start looking for that vehicle once they receive the hit information. Sergeant Law then observed that vehicle, attempted to do a traffic stop on the vehicle because of the fact that it had stolen license plates on it, and a pursuit ensued. So obviously this individual did not want to stop. Eventually we terminated that pursuit because it got too far out of our jurisdiction, but the California Highway Patrol picked it up, and eventually the individual crashed and was subsequently apprehended. In this incident, that particular individual had a very, very lengthy criminal history. He was on parole. He actually had a warrant out for violating the terms of his parole. There was narcotics in his vehicle. He was driving under the influence of those narcotics. So a litany of things go on. We can't say for certain why he was coming into town. But we do know, in looking at many of these cases, what we're finding is that in at least the cases where we've had some leads, the suspects have been from out of town. That does not mean that all of the suspects in these cases are from out of town, but in the ones that we've had, that we have lead information on, in the significant ones, they were from out of town, and for whatever reason, targeting the area. So again, this is not uncommon this is not just unique to Tiburon. We do find that individuals committing these crimes do not want to commit the crimes in the towns where they're known and where people know them. They want to go out of town. And so that's not completely uncommon. So again, last night was an example. We can't say exactly why this individual was coming into town, but we do know that when an officer was trying to lawfully stop him, he went to great measures to avoid being stopped. So that can only tell us either he was concerned about what was in the vehicle, which makes sense. But again, we can only hypothesize as to why he was coming into this town based on what we know. So again, that's an example of proactive police work. And this is a release. Now, in this particular case, we again had officers out working patrol in response to the burglaries that we had just previous to July 5th. Again, and I will say, actually going back on that last case, the vehicle in this particular instance, not only were the license plates stolen, their investigation, Sergeant Law determined that the vehicle itself was actually stolen, and that the suspect in this case had swapped out the vehicle plates. Again, so going back to this press release, this was, again, an example of what we're doing. Our officers are out there being proactive. They're working in the area, crimes. They're working in main thoroughways. I guess one of the advantages to policing Tiburon is there's only limited ways in and out of our town. That can be an advantage. It can also be a disadvantage. Especially in the case of evacuations and things of that nature. But in this particular instance on July 5th, again, officers were alerted to a stolen license plate coming in town. Again, officers located the vehicle, and they, again, with Sergeant Law, so there's a common denominator here. Sergeant Law, like I said, very seasoned, very, very veteran police officer, has investigated several of these crimes and knows oftentimes who the suspects are in the cases where we actually do capture them. Again, in this instance, the officers ended up in a pursuit. Again, Sergeant, again, we always do risk versus gain. Is it worth us to continue a pursuit? And we're always weighing the gain of capturing the suspect over the risk. And so it's a constant evaluation by the sergeants and officers when they're engaged in a pursuit because of the dangers involved. Fell Richmond Bridge. That vehicle did also eventually crash. The suspects got out and fled, and they were eventually apprehended. In this particular instance, the clothing that the suspects had in their vehicles matched up to some of the clothing that we had seen in the video surveillance for at least one of the burglaries. And again, there was stuff in that particular instance. And hold on, I'm getting an alert that I might have some background noise. So I'm going to try to shut that off for just a minute. So I'm going to put you all on hold because I want to kill that background noise, see if I can help you out here. Hold on just a second. Okay, is that hopefully that's a little bit better. Anyways, in the case I'm referring to in this in this particular instance, again, the suspects that were captured in this, we believe they were involved with the two cases that I pointed out earlier. Ironically enough, once they were captured and after this, are for almost a month, if not longer, the burglary stopped. So we believe that this same group of individuals had targeted houses in our city multiple times. So the other thing I have here, we'll present a little bit of stats for you guys. This is 2021 property crimes year to date. Year to date through October 31st. And what we tried to do is just give you a snapshot of how we compare to some of the other cities in our area. The only caveat I would say here is that for some reason, for some of these things like theft from a vehicle, basically is when a vehicle is not broken into. A vehicle burglary, in order for a vehicle burglary to occur, the vehicle has to be locked and there has to be some kind of evidence of forced entry or otherwise evidence that somehow the locking mechanism was overcome. If the vehicle is not locked or otherwise left unlocked, that would be just a theft from a vehicle. And what we find is that oftentimes people will see that maybe their car was rifled through. They don't know if anything was actually taken and they won't report it to us. We do encourage people to report those. And the reason being is that then we can collect that data. We can use that information as data, collect and aggregate that data so that we have accurate data about where the crimes are occurring. So, but here's just a quick snapshot. You'll see residential burglaries were depicted in blue. And this is kind of where we stand in comparison to Mill Valley, Sausalito, and then unincorporated areas of the Sheriff's Department in the southern Marin unincorporated areas, which encompasses a large area. It's much greater than just the Strawberry area. Stolen vehicles. In this particular instance, you'll see that in comparison for stolen vehicles, we're good in that area. So comparatively speaking, we haven't had a lot. Obviously, there's not any. So that's the good news there. Doesn't mean we still don't want you hardening your targets, but that's something that we've seen as of recently. Theft from vehicles, again, you'll see that this relatively is lower comparatively speaking. Again, I always preface this by saying that the reason why this might be low is folks not reporting it for whatever reason. That being said, again, we always encourage you to do so. We even if the officers go out, sometimes the folks will tell them, hey, we don't want a report taken, or it's no big deal, we just want to let you know. Oftentimes we'll encourage our officers even to write just a short report so that we capture that data. The data is important to us because, again, it helps us to direct our resources and it helps us to have a true gauge on where these types of incidents are occurring so that we can better problem solve. And then grand theft, basically this could be a theft from a department store, this could be theft from a house, an unlock, or this could be not from a house, this could be a theft from someone's person, or basically something where someone's not entering a structure to steal something. And grand theft would be things that were taken with a value of over $900. That's all that is. So some of the investigative tools and resources that we use, I think I talked a little bit about this earlier in some of our proactive stuff, but we do have the ALPERS, which stands for Automated License Plate Reader Systems. We do have fixed automated license plate reader systems strategically placed in areas of ingress and egress in the town of Tiburon. They are helpful, but they're not foolproof. There are a few ways to get around these, but not very common. In most instances, these will capture the plates of vehicles coming in. And a little bit about the ALPER system. So basically, people think that it takes a picture of the people in the vehicles. It doesn't do any of that. For privacy reasons, we're very careful to audit this system. All it does is the camera will snap an image of the license plate and the area of the vehicle directly around the license plate. So usually it'll capture the front license plate and the rear license plate, but it does not capture a driver. It does not capture anything else. In some cases, it may not even capture the make or model of the vehicle, depending on the pan of the angle. We would have to actually run the license plate to get that information. So where it's helpful to us is those license plates are scanned quickly, and the computer, there's artificial intelligence that then takes that scanned image of the license plate and compares it to a list of stolen license plate, wanted individuals that might be connected to the actual vehicle license plate itself or the vehicle. They'll determine if it's a stolen vehicle. For example, if we know that the vehicle is involved in crimes, that information can be entered, and the officers will be alerted as to what the alert is for that particular license plate, whether the individuals associated with the vehicle are involved in criminal activity or the vehicle stolen or whatever. Security camera footage, huge. That's why I encourage people in today's day and age where they've made them a lot more affordable to invest in a good security camera system. Most of the cameras now are high definition, they're good quality cameras. And again, even in the instances where the folks try to cover up their identities, having something is better than nothing. Oftentimes you'll see our officers when we do have a burglary canvassing the area, knocking on doors. Hey, do you have security footage? Along with this, we also have a registry for your camera. You can go to our webpage and you can register your camera. Doesn't mean that we're going to have access to your cameras. All it means is that if the officers are out in a particular area, they can look at that registry and see what houses have security cameras rather than have to knock on door to door to door. They'll go and they can go directly to those homes and assess if they're, because again, even if you might live in the path of where the suspects are, we're looking to even capture the vehicles coming in and out of the area. So DNA fingerprint analysis, again, that we would take that and we send that through a crime lab for analysis. That crime lab's out in Santa Rosa, and there's other labs that we use as well. Oftentimes the labs are backlogged and they will oftentimes prioritize violent crimes over property crimes. That's okay. We still want to get them. We'll still wait. So we want to do our due diligence. And then APB net or track flyers. Basically, that's one of those things I was telling you about earlier where we share information with other agencies. That could be pictures of the suspect vehicle or potentially suspects. Now, this is the important part, and this is the part I want to bring in the expertise of Sergeant Law. This is all about how you guys can help us. And Rob, you just let me know when you're ready to move on to the next slide. I'll power it through, or I'll kind of track with you and move it on to the next slide once you get through it. So we have some bullet points in here, but again, Sergeant Law can add to this with his expertise. And this is really about, this is probably the most important part of our presentation, is what we understand is that for us, the best offense we can have is a really good defense. And that is partnering with you all to help make it more difficult to break into your homes. And that's where we really get the most bang for our buck in terms of preventing these types of crimes. So I'll turn it over to Sergeant Law.
Hi, Chief. Thank you. And thank you to the participants. I think it's a really important topic here. And the communication aspect of your neighbors and everything like that, getting together and discussing safety in your town and in your neighborhood is very important. So just recently we had a burglary on Upper Cecilia Way. And this first bullet point comes to mind because a young child, well, not young child, I guess she was a teenager or a little bit older than that, said that she had posted that they were on vacation on social media. And she was concerned that potentially that post was read by some nefarious folks and potentially they were the suspects in this case. So yes, that is an issue, but I understand that there are children and young adults and who use social media every single day and they post about their lives and things like that. But I think it's important to think about, you know, who you tell that you're going out of town and why you're out of town and how long you're going to be gone and things like that. And don't necessarily post that information on social media unless your account's private and things like that, because it is open to the public and potential issues could arise from that. So that's a good bullet point there for not posting on social media, and especially if you have younger children, just advise them that, hey, it's probably not a good idea to do that. Vacation house check bullet point. We have a log here at the police department that we check every single day, that we have the officers go out and conduct vacation house checks. You can sign up at the police department or on the website for vacation house checks if you're going out of town for more than 3 days or so. We'll have an officer go out and you can specify whether you just want them to drive by, if you want them to check your whole house. If we find something like an open door or something like that, we will go inside your house and check to make sure that everything's good. So vacation house check is very important. It keeps us in the area, keeps us out active, and you can, like I said, you can set that up through the police department. And also with that, you can also notify your neighbors when going out of town, so they can kind of keep an eye out what's going on. And if you have pets or something like that, a good idea is to keep your pets at home and have somebody come check on those pets every single day. So there's somebody at your house every single day, and being able to, so if something does happen, they can notify police department. Stopping the mail and newspaper. We do occasionally have stacked up newspapers that nefarious people will, when they drive by, they'll see that these newspapers are stacked up in your driveway. That is a sign that you're not home or that you haven't been home for some time. So it's a good way of them to, go check to see if you're home. And then if your mailbox is full of mail, same thing. And also they can steal your mail and steal your identity. So that's another issue that we're having around town, is stolen mail out of mailboxes. So if you check your mail vigilantly every single day and you take your mail inside your house, then you shouldn't have an issue. But if you leave it overnight or for a week or so, then the potential of identity theft goes up. Lights on in the house. So the most recent burglaries we've had, I think time frames are between 7 p.m. and 9 p.m. What they're doing, from what I can tell, what they're doing is they're driving down the street looking for the house that's completely dark at between 7 and 9 p.m. Generally, people are eating dinner or watching TV or socializing inside their house between 7 and 9 p.m. With lights on and TVs and whatnot. But if your house is completely dark between 7 and 9, then they're going to assume that you're not home. So that's one of the things that I've seen in the most recent burglary, is a time frame of 7-9 p.m. where their house is completely dark. Now, if you leave some lights on, leave a TV on, have motion lights and things like that, then that's a deterrent for these guys not to stop at your house. They may go to the next house or down the street. So leave some lights on, leave them on timers. You don't have to have them during the day, but at night, 6 p.m. when it gets dark, light comes on, just a simple light in the living room, a lamp or whatnot. The most recent on Upper Cecilia burglary we had, they did have an alarm system, but it was not functioning. The alarm system was not functioning. The Wi-Fi for the camera system was down. So, functioning alarm system is very important. We've had, in fact, there was a prior burglary at the same house 2 years ago, where the guy climbed up onto the second story, broke a window, and the alarm went off and scared him off. This time the alarm was not on and they were able to get into the house and ransack it. So my thought is that if that alarm system was functioning, they would have been scared off again and they would have been fine. So make sure that if you do have an alarm system that you do use it. I mean, otherwise it's just, all for naught. And make sure it's, like Chief was saying earlier about the glass break sensor. So the most recent burglaries have been glass breaks. So on traditional alarm systems, not a lot of the actual glass in the door is alarmed. The motion of the opening the door is alarmed, but not the actual glass. So these guys know that if they just break the glass and go through the glass, then they're not going to be tripped on the motion sensor of the door itself. So they can get inside the house that way without tripping the alarm. Now, a glass break sensor is just like a motion sensor inside your house. The glass break will sense that noise, and that'll set off the alarm. So it's just another little sensor inside your house that senses that noise, that specific noise, and that'll set off the alarm. So again, house sitters, dog sitters, neighbors to check on home, have somebody come to your home every day if you have a relative in the area. Otherwise, the big thing is vacation house checks and extra patrols in the area. Again, neighbors all the time, you know, see something, say something right away. If you think it's off, it probably is. If you think it's suspicious, it probably is. So definitely call us regarding that. We have a, if you don't, you know, if you're worried about calling 911 or you don't want to be that person, you can always call us on a non-emergency line, and we'll send somebody out there. And we are available. Our police dispatch is available 24/7. Somebody will answer this number 789-2800 24/7. So we're always out and about. Motion lights are important. I mean, it is a deterrent. It won't necessarily keep everybody away, but it you know, gives you an idea of where these guys are going through your yard and things like that. So if your motion light goes on in the middle of the night, if you have it set properly, so it's not picking up little animals and things like that, then it potentially could be a person. Security cameras are a very important tool we use. Like Chief said earlier, get one that faces towards the street, all corners of your house. And even though on the last burglary on Upper Cecilia, even though their cameras weren't working, their neighbor's camera actually picked up the glass break, and we got a time frame of 3 a.m. from the neighbor's camera picking up the glass break from the victim house. So even though the victim house's cameras didn't work, the neighbor's cameras picked up that sound. So we were able to get a good time frame for that, which is very important for us, because prior to that, we had about a 12-hour, actually they were gone for a week. So we didn't have like a really good time frame. But it was important that the neighbor got the 3 a.m. time frame for us. So the latest MO for these guys is, like the chief was saying earlier, are the French doors. Now, like I said, French doors, the glass in a French door isn't necessarily alarmed. So these guys are going through French doors to breach any type of alarm system. Like he said on the burglary on Reed Ranch Road, the homeowners actually chained the doors together, the French doors together, before they left for their vacation, which was a total deterrent for these guys to try to get in through the door. Alexa. So you can also pick up, Alexa is very good tool too. It'll pick up noise inside your house that's linked to your security system. You can talk through that Alexa system, and it'll actually set up the alarm for you or alert you via your email or text. I lost you, Chief, on that. There we go. Dogs are very important. I mean, I have not been to a burglary where there's been a dog inside the house. Dogs are a huge deterrent. If it's just a yippy little barking dog that barks constantly when it hears something outside of your house, that's a total deterrent. If it's a big, large dog, that's another deterrent. Like I said, if you go on vacation, if you leave your dogs at home, have somebody come check on them every single day. And leaving your dog in your house overnight is a huge deterrent. Never gone to a burglary where there's a big dog inside. If you have packages delivered to your house, we recommend Amazon Locker or a delivery somewhere else, maybe to your workplace during that time. A package left on your doorstep. There's just opportunists out there looking for this, and potentially that could lead to a burglary of your house, because now they've walked up to your house to look at this package, and they've determined that you aren't home, and then they can just do whatever they like with the burglary. Have neighbors keep an eye out for deliveries when you aren't home. If they do see a burglary, if you have a good relationship with your neighbor, which I recommend everybody, at least go to your neighbors and tell them you're going to be gone. If there is a delivery, if your neighbors have a key, just open the door, slide the delivery into the doorway, or take it to their house and wait till you get home. And then again, if you have a Ring system or a Nest or Arlo camera system, make sure it's aimed at your doorstep, so we can get some video footage of whoever walks up to your house, and you would be alerted right away as well. So I mean, if you can operate a smartphone, if you can get Facebook, if you can get email on a smartphone, you can operate a camera system, because it's that easy now these days. And it'll alert you via text or email, something like that. It'll send you a snapshot of who's at your doorway at that very moment, and you can make the determination at that time whether you call the police or not. You know the slide, Chief? Chief, I think you're muted.
So I believe that's it for the slides. Sergeant Law, we did have a question regarding the mail, and I know you addressed mail theft and bringing your mail in right away. Do you have any other ideas for preventing mail theft?
Well, talking to the Postal Service, I mean, if you have everybody has the same delivery person usually in their area, and you can either go down to the post office and ask that they hold your mail, or you can ask your delivery person to put your mail, in a conspicuous location, or you can also get a locking mailbox, which the only person who would have the key is you and your delivery person. Very rarely, although there have been cases of people with these master keys, of mailboxes that they can get in. And also, people can use crowbars and whatnot to also try to get into a mailbox, but very rarely have we had that happen. It does happen. I'm not saying it doesn't, but a locking mailbox is a huge deterrent for mail theft.
Awesome. Thank you very much. Do we have any other questions out there?
I would just say, I want to open it up to questions. I just wanted to add into a couple things. Sergeant Law, could you just tell us, so Sergeant Law is your Area 2 area commander and community policing liaison. Could you just tell folks where Area 2 is, the area that it encompasses?
So if you're looking at a map, Area 2 starts at Avenida Mayor Flores and travels west on Tiburon Boulevard towards the freeway. And if you draw a straight line up Avenida Mayor Flores, up over the top of the mountain, over to Paradise Drive, and then west towards Corte Madera, or north towards Corte Madera and west towards Mill Valley, that's Area 2.
And thank you, Rob, appreciate it. And we'll be putting some more information as we update our webpage about kind of this community policing liaison or area command system. Again, just to remind folks what it's used for, it's kind of that last stop problem solving point of contact for you. I just wanted to reiterate a couple points that Sergeant Law made. Like I said, he's truly the expert. He's the one out there seeing this stuff and has been doing it for years. The see something, say something, really important. Looking out for your neighbors, your neighborhood, when things are suspicious. We also want to be careful that when we do that, we're reporting what a description of the individual and what exactly that they're doing that's suspicious. And the reason for this is for several reasons. A, we want our officers only contacting people that truly really need to be contacted, to minimize any kind of unnecessary contacts. And the other thing that sometimes we've had in the past, not all the time, but sometimes folks will come in and say, hey, there's a person of color, maybe they're an African-American individual or someone else in my neighborhood. That someone's race in and of itself is not suspicious, right? It's the activity of the individual regardless of the race. So I think that's important to kind of recognize that, because that puts us in a position where, honestly, if someone calls in and says that, well, there's someone suspicious in my neighborhood because their race doesn't fit in with the neighborhood, in many of those cases, we're not going to respond. We're not going to put our officers in a situation where they're going to contact somebody for not having any info, not having any kind of suspicious activity or something that we can point to for a reason to contact. Again, we want to encourage you to see something, say something. We just ask that you be specific about what it is. And what I tell people, hey, an example might be, hey, we just saw an individual. We know they don't live in the neighborhood. They walked to my neighbor's house. They looked through the windows. They walked back and forth. There's another car down the street that they came from that appears to be watching things, or they were parked out in front of the address for a very long time. It doesn't look like an Uber. I don't see an Uber or a Lyft or some kind of other rideshare thing on there. I know my neighbors. That's why, Sergeant Law kind of stressed this, getting to know your neighbors. The more you know, the idea behind Neighborhood Watch is getting to know your neighbors. And the idea behind that is so that you can tell your neighbors, hey, I'm expecting a delivery today, or hey, I'm expecting an individual, he's working on my yard, or etc. And this is the kind of vehicle he's going to be driving in. So again, we want Tiburon to be a thriving and welcoming community that's safe from crime, and these are the ways we can help with that. The other thing to point out too is, a lot of times we all, including myself, have folks working on our houses. They could be doing remodeling, construction. They could be doing other services for your home. And, knowing who those individuals are and making sure that your neighbors know who they are so they don't needlessly report those people as suspicious, but also keeping track of who those people are. Because in some instances, it's maybe not them themselves, but sometimes for whatever reason, somehow this information is getting out to individuals that commit these types of crimes. Now, whether they're surfing social media and they see that you're out somewhere and they know where you live, or otherwise you're announcing that you're going to be away from home for a period of time. That's why we discourage folks from doing that. They're getting that information, and it could be through maybe, someone that worked on your house. We're not saying that that's always the case, but even if that person just slips in casual conversation with somebody and says, oh yeah, we're working on this house, this beautiful home on this address, that might be just enough information for them to otherwise, start targeting that. So keeping track of who works on your home and knowing who that is helpful for a multitude of reasons. But that being said, those are the only 2 points I wanted to just kind of clarify. And again, I want to, as Lori said, open it up for any additional questions. We have a few more minutes, a couple more minutes. We'll take a few more questions if anyone has questions.
Chief, I've got an answer I've got a comment regarding one of the questions regarding what the burglars are targeting. Most instances, the burglars are targeting jewelry and master bedroom, bathroom areas of the house, closets where you might have a shoebox full of jewelry or whatever the case may be, upper drawers, top drawers of dressers where people might put jewelry. If you do have a safe, my recommendation is to put all your valuable jewelry, and if you have you have some kind of valuable set that you have, or that that's worth a lot of money, that you can put inside a safe. If it's a small safe, make sure the safe is bolted to the ground, because we've had instances where people just take the whole safe if it's not bolted to the ground. So if you do have valuable jewelry, either take it with you, put it in a safe deposit box, or put it in your safe. And don't leave things out in the open of value. And another thing is regarding your cars. If you leave cars at home, make sure that your garage door opener is not left inside your vehicle, because they will open your garage. If they break into your car, they will open your garage. That doesn't necessarily set up the alarm, and they can get into your house that way. So that's just another tip.
Yeah, that's all good stuff. With the holiday season upon us, we thought this was very timely, especially that, this is a time of the year where folks do tend to target specific types of crimes, burglaries. The reason for that is they know that people travel during the holidays and houses are going to be vacant. Again, to what Sergeant Law was saying, if you have valuables and really expensive things in your house, try not to advertise that. Or show that stuff off to maybe people you don't know that well that are inside your house for whatever reason. They could be working on the house, whatever. You don't want to otherwise kind of flaunt some of that stuff, because in some of these cases, we've seen in some of the burglaries, they were targeting jewelry, expensive jewelry. And the reason for that is it's harder to identify jewelry. So if you have expensive jewelry pieces, take photographs of it. If it has markings on it, make sure that you track those markings. The reason why folks will target jewelry is because they can go and sell it on the black market easily. It's not easily identifiable. It doesn't have identifying markings, etc., on it, or serial numbers like other property, or they can melt it down and get money for it. For things that do have serial numbers, keep track of your serial numbers. Definitely keep track of your serial numbers. Write that stuff down, because then we can enter that into a system. And if a police officer locates someone and they have some suspicious property with them, they can run that serial number of that item through a database. And if it's entered in as stolen, then that's going to get a hit and we can recover that property. That's the only other thing I would add to that. We also, during the holiday season, we see things like package thefts, packages sitting on the porch. People know that people are going to Amazon and these different things to buy gifts, and some of those gifts might be valuable. And so you have crews that will literally just drive through towns, and they'll just pick any town and just drive through, look for packages, run up, grab the package, and away they go. So any other questions before we close this out? It's a little bit past the 8 o'clock hour. We want to make sure that we address your questions. So anything else?
Chief, there was one asked about any tips specifically for residents of multifamily dwellings like condos or apartments.
I saw that. I was trying to type in an answer, but I'll answer it live. And same goes as what Sergeant Law said, getting to know your neighbors and having communication with your neighbors about, when you're going to be home, when you're not going to be home. Getting to know your neighbors is probably number one. Number two, working with your management association. Most condos have like some type of management association, or apartment will have a management association. And designating a delivery area. What we find is that in some condominium areas, even if they're gated off, they'll have like a common courtyard, and boxes will go into that common courtyard area. And, with the small fences and without any kind of significant security measures, folks can just hop those fences or otherwise get in or defeat those and steal boxes. So what we always try to tell people is, again, schedule deliveries for when you're home so that you're there to pick them up. Or if you have an extra space in your condominium complex or apartment, designated delivery spot where otherwise, Amazon or another delivery driver has access to this locked spot where they drop off boxes that's secure, that only residents have access to. Again, the best bet really is trying to schedule those things for when you're home or to your workplace, so that they're not going to be outside. But that is a tactic. Another question I see is there a good place to hide small valuables if you don't have a safe? Yeah, I would say that any area that's not common. I don't want to go into too many specific details. I don't want to give people ideas that maybe would otherwise want to know where you hide your stuff. But there are places inside your home. The best advice I would give you is for any areas in your home that are not easily seen by the naked eye. Meaning that, if I'm just scanning your room really quick, I'm not going to pick up on that area. Drawers and places like that are common places for folks to look. So you have something other than a drawer or something obvious, where in most of these cases, they'll look under mattresses. So mattresses will often get flipped. They'll open drawers. So that just gives you an idea of the areas that they're targeting and looking for things. So, if you try not to hide them in those types of areas, any other place is helpful. It's better than leaving it out in plain sight. So that's a good question. And I don't see any other questions in the chat. I think we'll go ahead in the interest of time and close this out. We're always accessible to you. I want to remind you all, we are your police department. And that means that we are here to serve you. And when you have questions or concerns, just email us, reach out to us. We are here to serve you and help you. And finally, with Thanksgiving rapidly coming upon us in the next couple of days, I just want to take this opportunity to tell you all how thankful I am to be here. And
Chief, I've got it.
are we still live?
Yeah, just really quick.
Yep.
I think these things are great, especially virtually, and everybody has time to get together and do something like this live, in person. So if you have a homeowners association or anything like that you would like to get together with me or another one, an officer, and we could do this virtually with your homeowners association, I'll be completely happy to do that for you. And we can kind of individualize this to neighborhoods. And then, we can start as a community helping each other, trying to get rid of these crimes that are occurring. So
that's a great point. I can't reinforce that enough. So with that being said, happy holidays to everyone. We're wishing you all very safe and relaxing and happy Thanksgiving time with your family and loved ones. And again, I'm just thankful to be here, and we're thankful that you folks are participating with us to help keep our community safe. So thank you very much and have a great night.